All right, so here we have a component that is rendering a question, a quiz, right? In terms of an array of questions that is receiving from the server. And so here it is. This is the component, right? That the sorry, no, not this one. The quiz component. There it is. So the quiz component, right? When it loads, the first thing that it does is that grabs the ID of the quiz and then goes and fetches the questions for that quiz and stores them, binds them in a local questions array. Perfect. So what we're going to do here is that as it's iterating, right, this array of questions, right, is being used in this for loop here, where we're extracting each one of the questions and then passing them into the component. Well, we need to populate that question, right? That question now, if you remember, we want to send all these questions back to the server, but with an additional field, right? The answer field, right? So it's going to have the original question plus an answer field. But the answer lives inside of each one of these components, right? This answer. So we need to somehow bind this answer, bind it to the answer field in the question that we're sending into the component, right? So somehow we need this answer to be used to populate the original question, right? And then we can use that question in the array. The problem here that if you modify any answer in the question here, this question is only one way, right? It's being used only to as a pass-through, and we are using it here. So how do we bind the answer back up the chain, right? So the way we're going to do that is as follows, right? We're going to say we're going to create a brand new field called answer. Okay, and we want to this answer. We wanted to not only we don't want it to just read data from above into the component. We wanted to also expose the data that is in the component, expose it back out for us, right? So in essence, we want to behave with the parentheses, right? So these parentheses in the Angular attributes, what they mean is that the data is outflowing, right? It's coming out of the component and it's being used to populate whatever we give it here, right? We want to populate. So if you use both the square brackets and the parentheses, it means that the data can flow in both directions. Okay. So what do we want to bind it with? We want to bind it with the original question and the answer, right? So that if you select something, right, whatever answer you give in for the true false, I want that to populate my answer field in the question so that I can now take the entire array of questions and then send it over as an array of all the questions, including now the answer that I am reading from inside of this field, right? So notice that we have this squiggly line, it's complaining. So to fix this, what we're going to do is that because we have the square brackets, we need to declare this as an input. Okay, we need to declare it as an input, right? So we are receiving data from the outside world, but we also, according to these parentheses, I need to be able to emit data as well, expose data to the outside. And the way we do that is through an output, right? Output. And unfortunately, the API is not as trivial as providing both the input and the output on the field. Although, that would be too easy, right? Instead, the output is really is going to be using what is called an emitter, an event emitter, right? That is going to allow us to notify, anybody who has this variable in its attribute and whoever is listening to changes in this answer, we're going to be able to notify them and send them an event saying, hey, the answer changed and here's the new value. Okay, so now a common naming convention for these outputs is that usually they're tied to an input field, right? So usually you start off with the same name, right? You start off with the same name, and then you append changed to the end. Okay, change to the end. So and what we do is that the type of this output is an emitter. It's an event emitter. There it is, event emitter. And also this event emitter needs to know what are you emitting, right? What type of events are you emitting, right? And these events could be numerical, could be strings, could be dates, could be entire objects. In our case, we're going to emit just plain old strings. Okay, and so what we're going to do is that when it changes, when the answer changes, right? We want to emit and say, hey, the answer changed. They selected a true, false, or different choice. We want to notify anybody who's listening and bound to that variable. We want to notify them, right? So here's I have a cheat sheet, right? So you don't have to invent this. Where is it? Right. So what we're going to do is that when you submit an answer, right, which we already have, I think we have like great answer or something. If this were a quiz on Blackboard, there's a feature on Blackboard where you're given one question at a time, and to advance to the next question, you have to submit your answer, right? And once you've submitted it, then you can go on to the next question. So what we're going to do is that we're going to add a submit answer. We're going to add an add submit answer, and this function is going to tell us, this is a good time, to notify everybody that your answer has changed, right? So answer answered. Oh, sorry, I call it answer change. There we go. And who are we going to notify? Well, whoever binds to that, right? Here, right? And whoever is bound to this, right? Whatever variable we put here, right? It's going to be modified, right? Because of the emitter. And we're going to pass, you use this dot change answer change dot emit, right? And this is where anybody who's bound to that variable is going to receive a notification that the value changed, right? And if they are rendering something in the DOM, that they need to update their little part of the DOM. What happened here? What are you complaining about? What's going on? Truthful and correctly implements on init. On init. ing on init. What did I do? What happened here? Why? What didn't you like? I was just adding a function here. Submit answer. Okay, and this is going to be this dot answer change dot emit this dot answer. There. Not sure what was it complaining about earlier. All right, so notice that now the quiz component, notice that the answer is no longer complaining with its squiggly line. And we really have to do that for all our components, right? So we're going to add it also here to the multiple choice component. And we're just going to copy the, what we did for the true false, right, where we are going to just use this like this. Same exact deal, right? But now in the multiple choice, this answer here, right, is going to be replaced as an input and an output. Here we need to load that, and here we need to load that too. Emitter, yep, perfect. All right, there we have it. So now we have the outer component that iterates over the questions bound to each one of the answers of each one of the question components.